and welcome to the Martini Shot, home of movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails. My name is Brandon. Before we get into the review of the Marvels, let's craft a super cocktail that will have you bouncing across the galaxy called Quantum Entanglement. Quantum Entanglement is the phenomenon that afflicts our three heroes, causing them to bounce all around the galaxy whenever they use their powers in tandem. While this drink won't take you that far, it does have a good amount of alcohol in it with a nice balance of sweet and bitter alongside fruit and botanicals. Let's get into it. Alright, so for this cocktail it's going to be shaken, but we're going to be building it in quite a different way. We're not going to be putting our main spirit actually into the shaker, and I'll show you why a little bit later. But for right now, let's go ahead and start with one of our liqueurs, which is going to be lychee liqueur, and you're going to add half an ounce. Follow that up with 1 ounce of grapefruit juice, 3/4 ounce of lime juice, half an ounce of simple syrup, and then finally 5 heavy dashes of Angostura bitters. And this isn't a requirement, it's not going to affect the flavor, but if you want to add a little bit more flair, you can go ahead and throw in some edible luster dust as well, just to get it sparkling like the cosmos. Alright, let's get some ice in that shaker and shake to chill. Once you're done with that, go ahead and strain that over some fresh ice in a chilled Collins glass or any tall glass that you happen to have. To give it some body, we're going to top it up with some soda water. And then finally, to add our main spirit, we're going to be using gin, but not just any gin. We're going to be using some Empress gin, which, if you're not familiar, is infused with butterfly pea tea leaves, which gives it this nice purple complexion. And we're going to go ahead and layer that right on top, about 2 ounces. And then the cocktail is pretty much done, but if you happen to have that one special ingredient that I like to use in a lot of my superhero cocktails, which is electric dust, you can go ahead and sprinkle just a little bit on top. And there you go, now you have Quantum Entanglement. So even though the layering is nice and pretty, I would advise that you give this a bit of a stir before you actually drink it, just so you can get some of the gin down there, and you won't just have a mouthful of purple gin, you'll actually be able to get some of the other ingredients as well. It's definitely very botanical forward, however, it is eventually going to subside to the lighter, more tart flavors of the grapefruit juice and the lime juice. And that lychee liqueur, another fruit flavor, kind of comes in underneath it. Pairs very, very well alongside those more tart fruits. And not only does that soda water give it a lot of body, really kind of extends the drink, but it makes everything taste a lot lighter. Not as strong as you might think coming from a drink with all of the gin literally on top. It waters it down just enough, but you can definitely tell there's still alcohol in there, which makes it a very easy drink to sip on. Definitely a good chill cocktail if you're not looking for anything strong, or at least something that doesn't taste as strong as it actually is. Now that we have our drink, let's fly into the review of the Marvels. Marvel Studios' fall from grace should be studied in history classes right alongside the fall of the Ottoman Empire. A few years ago, the MCU was considered too big to fail with the iron grip it had on film and pop culture. Flash forward to today, and the signs of decay are very apparent. Overworked VFX teams, middling box office numbers and reviews, multiple reshoots and rewrites, and an overall unsureness towards the franchise's future directions are just some of the issues that have plagued Marvel's post-Endgame world. Despite a few bright spots such as Spider-Man No Way Home and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Marvel has been struggling to instill confidence in both fans and casual viewers alike, which has led to some all-time lows for the mega company. The Marvels is their latest attempt to keep the train rolling, and if you've been looking at the film's opening numbers and reviews, you're probably thinking the train has fully left the tracks and leveled an entire town. The film's predecessor, Captain Marvel, received a mixed consensus upon release, yet still managed to rake in over $1 billion. Probably thanks to this guy. It was a character that really seemed to cause a divide in the fan base, so it was safe to assume that this film would have the odds stacked against it regardless of quality. My interest in the MCU is at an all-time low, but I still sat my dumbass down in what I must legally refer to as a theater of a sort, and gave it a watch to see if it's really as bad as a lot of people have made it out to be. Honestly, I didn't think it was the worst thing the MCU has made. In fact, I almost like it more than the original Captain Marvel. A decent cast with genuine chemistry and a creative gimmick definitely helped bolster the film, leading to a lighter, sillier offering that isn't always terrible. That being said, I'm still hesitant to call this a good film. The conflict and villain are incredibly generic, the tone is all over the place, and it still contains the same aimless wheel spinning found in most Marvel films of the past few years. I hardly think it's the worst MCU film, but this did next to nothing for me, and my interest in the extended universe and its personalities Marvel are attempting to move to the forefront. In the Marvels, Carol Danvers, Monica Rambeau, and Kamala Khan all become entwined on a cosmic level, causing them to swap places whenever they use their powers at the same time. Together, they must learn to control this connection in order to save the galaxy from Dar-Ben, a Kree leader with a vendetta against Captain Marvel, who is trying to steal the resources of other planets in order to save her homeworld. The film is directed by Nia DaCosta, who you may remember as the director behind 2021's Candyman remake, a film that I thought was a bit too overstuffed with ideas and themes, but still had an interesting artistic vision. It's a shame that vision doesn't make it into here though, as this film, much like many other recent MCU films, feel as if they could have been directed by anybody. I really don't think this is DaCosta's fault, as Marvel really does seem to play a heavy hand in the look and presentation of each of their films. Sure, if you're an MCU vet like James Gunn, you can probably call more of the shots, but if you're fairly new to the scene, it almost feels like the studio decides for you what the film should look and feel like. This causes most non-action scenes to appear very flat and uninteresting, and while it's certainly been worse in other films, it's still worth noting here. There's no real creativity to how scenes flow together or the presentation as a whole, which I get is done to keep some level of uniformity between each and every film, but that also leads to a more often than not uninspired final product. You'll see the same type of edits, shot compositions, musical cues, and transitions as in past films, which become insanely noticeable after 33 films. This isn't a unique issue to the Marvels, but damn if I'm not going to keep pointing it out until something changes. One caveat to this is the fight scenes, which at least have some level of interest to them thanks to the film's switching gimmick, which does lead to some more engaging camera work and scene structure. By far, one of the worst aspects of modern Marvel movies has been the visuals, which are the product of overworked and undervalued VFX artists Disney keeps chained to radiators underneath Magic Kingdom. But truth be told, these visuals aren't entirely terrible. They can look a bit soundstagey at times, but I found the backgrounds and particle effects to be mostly passable. We do get a scene with a bunch of cats later down the line that does look a bit hokey, but I'll be honest, it was probably the funniest part of the film, even if hearing memories from cats triggered my PTSD. The lead cast is probably the best thing the film has going for it, as the interactions between Brie Larson, Tiana Paris, and Iman Vellani all feel fairly genuine and at times pretty charming. They all tend to bounce off one another pretty well, even though the script itself doesn't give them much room to land impactful emotional moments or jokes that really land. Still, the film gives Larson's Captain Marvel way more of a character than her origin film, even if her arc isn't as interesting as it could have been. At least it's something. Iman Vellani's Kamala definitely shows the most potential as the hero who could potentially direct the MCU into a new age, with her infectious fangirl nature and relatability making her perhaps my favorite of the trio. Paris's Monica Rambeau is a solid continuation of Carol Danvers' history, though at times I did feel like she wasn't given a ton to do until suddenly later in the movie. Speaking of not having anything to do, Sam Jackson's Nick Fury is here. And that about covers it. Now we get to the villain Dar-Ben, played by Zaw Ashton, the newest member of the underdeveloped and uninteresting MCU villain club. Her connection to Captain Marvel makes sense and could have been somewhat engaging, but she's given nothing unique to work with, whether it be in terms of power set, motivation, or character development. Her master plan is essentially the plot of Spaceballs, though without the giant Iron Maid.
She's gone from suck to blow.
The villain isn't the only weak spot for me, as I also found the tone and story to be pretty sloppy. The film's melding of comedy and world-ending conflict don't always mesh, effectively undermining the gravity of the situation. You never really feel like the terrible things that happen here hold any real lasting importance or emotional weight because our characters undermine it with their reactions. Captain Marvel's whole arc centers around the ramifications of her past shoot first, questions later attitude, but this doesn't lead to any real meaningful change for her. The same could really be said about all the main characters. They may go through physical and emotional change somewhat, but none of it actually feels meaningful. The reluctant team shtick feels pretty forced and is quickly moved past, never really being resolved in an interesting way. Any type of inner conflict that rears its head between the teammates is quickly moved past in favor of the same old by-the-numbers, saving the world story beats. There's just no real payoff to almost anything. The whole swapping gimmick is just that, a gimmick. At times, its rules feel fairly inconsistent, and its resolution kind of just happens, not because it's solved in any kind of meaningful or interesting way, but just because the story needs it to end. It's funny because this is the shortest MCU film yet, and I kind of wish it had more time to properly utilize the film's ideas. There's a whole planet whose inhabitants speak only in song that's just breezed past despite appearing at a significant spot in the plot. Granted, that could have been for the best, but it just feels like a weird thing to have and then not do anything with. At the end of the day, it's just all half-baked. The script is in desperate need of a rewrite because it doesn't service the characters nor the greater expanse of the MCU. Ideas are simply cobbled together with no satisfying payoff, which leaves most of the film feeling hollow and void of any semblance of structure. But like some half-baked things, there's a bit of sweetness in there. The main cast interactions are enjoyable enough, and at times the silliness hits just right when not pressed up against the serious nature of worlds being destroyed. It's not quite as ugly and grating as Quantumania or a huge step down from its predecessor like Love and Thunder. The fact of the matter is that this is a filler movie if I've ever seen one. If it's not working to elevate its characters or meaningfully build upon the shambled and fractured cinematic universe, then it's simply just an hour-and-a-half commercial for its post-credit scene. Not gonna spoil it, but they're really hoping you point and clap, like their lives depend on it. For my rating, I'm giving this film 2.5 flirkins out of 5. Closer to a 2 than a 3. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Martini Shot. If you saw the Marvels, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. And if you like what you saw here and would like to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me across all social media channels. Those links are down in the description below. And if you enjoy movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails, be sure to check out my website, martinishot.blog. Until next time, thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Live deliciously, but please remember to drink responsibly.